And your counsel wants us to believe that you lack the capacity, that you were insane. And I don't buy into that.
The reaction of evil teens facing life sentences is a contentious issue that delves into the realms of psychology, criminology, and societal perceptions of justice. As society reflects the questions of accountability, rehabilitation, and punishment for crimes committed by teenagers, the reactions following their verdict would leave one in shock. Here in this video are reactions of 10 evil teens after receiving their life sentence verdicts. Jeremy Goodale.
Judge, that completes the victim impact statements. Thank you.
On the 18th of April 2023, Jeremy Goodale found himself standing before the judge, awaiting his fate. In the courtroom, the judge meticulously weighed the factors that would determine the appropriate sentence for Jeremy Goodale. The judge took into account both mitigating and aggravating factors, carefully considering the complexities of the case. One of the key mitigating factors was Jeremy's genuine remorse. Throughout the proceedings, Jeremy expressed deep regret for his actions and the pain he had caused. His heartfelt statement resonated with those present, evoking a sense of sorrow and empathy. The judge acknowledged Jeremy's acceptance of responsibility as a mitigating factor, recognizing that he had pled guilty and spared the victim's family and the community from a traumatic trial. Another mitigating factor was Jeremy's capacity for rehabilitation. Despite the severity of the crime, the judge recognized that Jeremy, as a young individual, had the potential for growth and change. The court considered his age, lack of prior criminal history, and the evaluation by Dr. Cunningham, which revealed undiagnosed ADHD and marijuana abuse. These factors contributed to the court's belief that Jeremy was a good candidate for rehabilitation. However, the judge also had to consider the aggravating factors in the case. The nature of the offense itself was heinous and brutal. Nehemiah Grigo, a teacher and caregiver, was killed in a cruel and calculated manner. The judge emphasized the significance of this factor, recognizing the immense pain and suffering inflicted upon the victim. The level of Jeremy's participation in the murder was another aggravating factor. While Jeremy's defense argued that he was influenced by his co-defendant, the judge found that Jeremy knowingly participated in the plan to kill Nehemiah Grigo. His actions, including striking the victim with a baseball bat, demonstrated a level of culpability that could not be ignored. At just 16 years old, he committed a crime that would forever change the lives of those involved. The severity of his actions at such a young age is truly disturbing and raises questions about the boundaries of justice and the complexities of human nature. The judge, bound by the law, had the difficult task of balancing the need for justice with the potential for rehabilitation. The court recognized the mitigating factors in Jeremy's case, including his young age, lack of prior criminal history, and capacity for growth and change. However, the severity of the crime could not be ignored, and the judge ultimately handed down a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Brandon Spencer.
I'm sorry for what happened, Your Honor, but I need some life in prison.
Brandon's defense during the trial was lackluster, to say the least. He has since expressed his dissatisfaction with his legal representation, claiming that they were incompetent and failed to effectively challenge the prosecution's narrative. This lack of a strong defense allowed the flawed prosecution's case to prevail, leading to Brandon's conviction on 4 counts of attempted first-degree murder. On a dark Halloween night, 4 shots rang out, causing panic and chaos among a crowd of over 300 people. Among them was 19-year-old Brandon Spencer, who would soon find himself at the center of a gripping legal battle. Charged with a shooting that took place at a party on the USC campus, Brandon maintained his innocence, vehemently denying any involvement in gang activity. In April 2014, Brandon Spencer was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. Understandably, he broke down during the sentencing, describing it as watching his own funeral. The judge's decision was based on the flawed narrative presented by the prosecution, despite the lack of concrete evidence linking Brandon to the shooting. However, there is still hope for Brandon. The phone evidence used against him was illegally searched without a warrant, violating his constitutional rights. Brandon appealed on these grounds, arguing that the evidence should be deemed inadmissible. Unfortunately, the court upheld the evidence, claiming that the police believed the search was legal at the time. This ruling highlights the challenges faced by Brandon in his pursuit of justice. Additionally, tests conducted on Brandon's hands and arms for gunshot residue came back negative. While gunshot residue analysis is considered a controversial and unreliable science, the absence of any residue on Brandon's hands and arms raises doubts about his involvement in firing a weapon. It is highly unlikely that he would have had the opportunity to wash off any residue while fleeing the scene of the crime. The motive behind targeting the rival gang member Gino Hall was that he was the individual who had allegedly shot Brandon a year earlier. However, it remains unclear why Gino Hall was never charged with that shooting, and why the prosecution focused so intensely on Brandon Spencer. Speculation suggests that USC, a prestigious private college, did not want to deal with the negative publicity and exerted pressure on law enforcement to close the case swiftly. While we cannot definitively prove this speculation, it raises concerns about the fairness and impartiality of the investigation and subsequent trial. Despite his incarceration, Brandon Spencer remains determined to make a positive impact on at-risk youth and prevent them from following a path that leads to incarceration. Even from behind bars, he continues to fight for justice and hopes to appeal his case. Roxana Sikorski.
And used by an older adult. This has been proven in court.
Roxana Sikorski, affectionately known as Roxy, was born and raised in a tight-knit community in a small town. She grew up in a loving family with her parents, Florine and Mr. Sikorski, and her younger siblings, Lucas and Angelique. From an early age, Roxy showed promise and had dreams of a bright future. Her childhood was filled with laughter, family outings, and the support of her loved ones. Roxy was a diligent student, known for her intelligence and kind-hearted nature. She had a close circle of friends and was well-liked by her peers. However, as Roxy entered her teenage years, she began to face the challenges that come with adolescence. Like many teenagers, she grappled with issues of identity, peer pressure, and the desire for independence. It was during this vulnerable period that she encountered an older adult whose influence would change the course of her life forever. This older individual, whose identity remains undisclosed, preyed upon Roxy's vulnerability and manipulated her in ways that are difficult to comprehend. Roxy, craving guidance and acceptance, fell into the clutches of this manipulator, who gradually gained control over her thoughts and actions. As the manipulation intensified, Roxy found herself entangled in a web of deceit and darkness. Roxy's innocence was shattered as she became a victim of inappropriate sexual behavior, a fact that would later come to light during the court proceedings.
I would like to apologize to my family.
It is important to note that Roxy's family was unaware of the sinister forces at play in their daughter's life. They trusted that she was making responsible choices and had no reason to suspect the danger she was facing. Roxy's family, torn apart by the revelations, attended every hearing, hoping for answers and seeking closure. Florine Sikorski, Roxy's mother, bravely addressed the court, expressing the pain and confusion her family had endured.
This past year and a half have been the most stressful and painful time for myself and my family.
Florine's statement shed light on the limited guidance Roxy had received during the court proceedings. The prosecution, bound by the law and the charges brought against Roxy, reached a plea agreement with the defense. While they had hoped for a better outcome, they believed that this was the best agreement they could reach under the circumstances. They requested that the court abide by the sentence agreement. The judge, after reviewing the pre-sentence investigation report and considering the comments made by both sides, acknowledged the bizarre and shocking nature of the crimes committed. The judge recognized that Roxy had shown signs of remorse and had second thoughts during the process. However, due to Roxy's age, the judge requested that she be placed in a secure facility, the Calumet Center, until she reached her 18th birthday. Nicholas Lindsay. As Nicholas Lindsay was escorted out of the courtroom, his face remained stoic, betraying little emotion. It was a chilling sight, a stark reminder of the darkness that can reside within a person's soul. It was a quiet evening on February 21st, 2011, when tragedy struck. St. Petersburg police officer David Crawford responded to a 911 call about a possible burglary in progress. Little did he know that this routine call would be his last. As Officer Crawford approached the scene, he had no idea that danger lurked in the shadows. Unbeknownst to him, Nicholas Lindsay, a troubled 17-year-old, was armed and ready to commit a horrific act. Lindsay, fueled by a combination of anger, fear, and a desire to escape, opened fire on Officer Crawford without warning. The shots rang out, shattering the calm of the night and forever changing the lives of those involved. The sound of gunfire echoed through the neighborhood, alerting fellow officers to the dire situation. They rushed to the scene, only to find Officer Crawford lying lifeless on the ground, a hero cut down in the line of duty. The news of Officer Crawford's death spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves through the tight-knit community. The loss of a dedicated and respected officer left a void that could never be filled. As the investigation unfolded, all eyes turned to Nicholas Lindsay, a troubled teenager with a troubled past. It was revealed that Lindsay had a history of run-ins with the law, a troubled upbringing, and a propensity for violence. The evidence against Lindsay was overwhelming. He confessed to the murder, leaving no doubt about his guilt. The community was left grappling with the question of how a young person could commit such a heinous act.
It was his decision, not his parents'.
During the trial, the courtroom was filled with tension as the prosecution presented a compelling case against Lindsay. They painted a picture of a troubled young man driven by anger and a desire to escape the consequences of his actions. As the trial reached its climax, the moment of truth arrived. The jury deliberated, carefully weighing the evidence presented before them. And finally, the verdict was announced. Nicholas Lindsay was found guilty of first-degree murder, a verdict that would seal his fate. The courtroom was filled with a mix of emotions: relief for Officer Crawford's family, sorrow for the loss of a young life, and a sense of justice served. Jennifer Mee.
The parents testified, has a history of being someone who can be manipulated.
The chilling tale of Jennifer Mee, a name that once resonated with innocence and curiosity but now stands as a haunting reminder of a life gone astray. At first, the attention was overwhelming. I never expected my hiccups to become such a big deal. But as time went on, I started to crave more excitement, more attention. As Jennifer's fame grew, so did her desire for a life beyond the hiccups. She longed for a taste of the wild side, a life filled with adventure and rebellion. Unfortunately, her quest for excitement would lead her down a treacherous path. Jennifer's journey into darkness began when she started experimenting with drugs. The allure of a life outside the confines of her hiccup fame proved too tempting to resist. She found herself drawn to a crowd that would ultimately change the course of her life. They introduced me to a world I had never known before. It was during this time that Jennifer met Laren Rayford and Lamont Newton, two individuals who would become significant figures in her life. They offered her a sense of belonging, a feeling of being part of something bigger. But little did Jennifer know that their influence would lead her down a path of destruction. That night, everything went wrong. I was high on a combination of ecstasy, marijuana, and cocaine. My roommates encouraged me to lure a man, Shannon Griffin, whom I had met online, to a dark alley. The plan was to rob him, but I had no idea it would turn into something far more sinister. What was meant to be a simple robbery took a horrifying turn. Jennifer claims that she had no knowledge of the plan involving a gun, but the consequences were grave. Shannon Griffin lost his life that night, and Jennifer found herself at the center of a murder investigation. Despite the challenges, Jennifer has managed to maintain a sense of resilience and hope. She has become a model inmate, following the rules and regulations set forth by the prison authorities. In my extensive research on female psychopaths, Jennifer Mee does not fit into that category at all. Her story is one of manipulation and bad decisions, rather than premeditated evil. Jennifer's case has also shed light on the flaws within the justice system. The strict laws in Florida hold everyone involved in a crime responsible for the outcome, regardless of their level of participation. It's disheartening to know that I am held equally responsible for the actions of others. I never intended for anyone to get hurt, yet I find myself facing a life sentence. The public's perception of Jennifer Mee has been shaped by her rise to fame as the hiccup girl and the subsequent fall from grace. Many struggle to reconcile the innocent girl they once knew with the convicted murderer she has become. Jennifer's life sentence has left her with little hope of ever being released. However, she remains determined to fight for her freedom and reunite with her family. Shandell Jackson.
I know that that is something that is reserved for the most serious of cases.
Shandell's reaction to the life sentence was nothing short of explosive. In a flurry of emotions, he abruptly tried to speak over the judge, causing chaos in the courtroom. Shandell Jackson, a name that would soon become synonymous with true crime, found himself at the center of a shocking and sensational case. Born and raised in a rough neighborhood, Shandell faced numerous challenges from an early age. Growing up without knowing his biological father left a lasting mark on him, compounded by the loss of a mentor figure who died during his formative years, another victim of the violence that plagued his community. Shandell's mother, Roxana Jackson, worked tirelessly to provide for her son, but the harsh realities of poverty surrounded them. Despite having plenty of relatives nearby, Shandell's upbringing was far from stable. The lack of financial resources and the constant struggle to make ends meet undoubtedly took a toll on his young mind. As Shandell entered his teenage years, he began to exhibit signs of rebellion and a disregard for authority. He became a familiar face to law enforcement with a string of arrests and convictions that painted a troubling picture of his future. In January 2009, at the age of 18, Shandell was arrested for resisting and obstructing an officer. He served 34 days in a county prison for this misdemeanor before being released. However, Shandell's run-ins with the law did not end there. In May of the same year, he found himself in trouble again, this time in Sheboygan County, where he served an additional 3 days in jail for carrying a concealed weapon. These brushes with the criminal justice system were clear indicators of the path Shandell was headed down. But it was a week before the murder of Nathan Potter that Shandell's criminal activities escalated to a new level. On North Holton Street, Shandell shot a man during a heated altercation. Miraculously, the victim survived, but Shandell fled the scene, knowing the severe consequences he could face if caught. Eyewitnesses attested to seeing the victim quarreling with a woman, further complicating the circumstances surrounding the incident. Shandell's troubles reached their climax on that fateful night when he and his accomplice, Derek Thomas, targeted Nathan Potter. The events leading up to the murder were fueled by a sense of thrill-seeking and a desire for easy money. On July 5th, Shandell acquired a .45 caliber handgun and suggested to Derek that they rob people for fun. Little did they know that their actions would have devastating consequences. In the early hours of July 6, 2009, Shandell and Derek spotted Nathan, a 21-year-old student, as a potential target. They followed him, waiting for the right moment to strike. With Derek acting as the lookout, Shandell confronted Nathan, demanding money. When Nathan couldn't comply, Shandell's frustration boiled over, and he fired a fatal shot, ending Nathan's life in an instant. In April 2010, Judge Rebecca Dallas delivered a verdict that left no room for doubt. Shandell Jackson was guilty of first-degree murder. Isabella Guzman. Throughout the trial, Isabella remained elusive and denied any involvement in her mother's murder. She put forward a plea of insanity, claiming that she believed she was saving the world by killing someone else. At just 18 years old, Isabella found herself at the center of a horrifying crime that left the nation in disbelief. She was charged with the first-degree murder of her own mother, 47-year-old Yun Mahoy. Isabella's journey from TikTok fame to infamy sent chills down the spines of many. Her court videos, filled with unsettling gestures and occasional smiles, only added to the intrigue surrounding her case. As her popularity on TikTok grew, so did the speculation about what could have driven her to commit such a heinous act. However, as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Isabella's troubled childhood did not justify the brutal crime she was accused of. The evidence revealed a horrifying scene, with over 70 stab wounds inflicted upon her mother's body. This claim, however, was met with skepticism from many, including Ryan Hoy, who was married to Yun Mahoy at the time of the incident. Ryan recalled the events leading up to that fateful night, describing altercations and threats between Isabella and her mother. Just a day before the incident, Isabella had written a chilling note, hinting at a dark intent. The night of the crime, Ryan heard his wife's screams and rushed upstairs to find a horrifying scene of blood and violence. As the judge read out Isabella's sentencing, she exhibited strange behavior, looking around and pointing towards her eyes. The district attorney argued that Isabella's significant mental health issues, including schizophrenia and paranoid delusions, played a role in her actions. Ultimately, Isabella was found not guilty by reason of insanity. Michael Swanson. Swanson's audacious behavior and complete lack of remorse will leave you in disbelief. Michael Swanson, the subject of this true crime story, was born on September 11, 1993, in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. From an early age, Swanson exhibited signs of troubled behavior, which would eventually culminate in a horrifying act of violence that shocked a small town in northern Iowa. Growing up, Swanson had a tumultuous childhood. His parents divorced when he was just a young boy, and he was primarily raised by his mother, Lisa Swanson. Despite his mother's best efforts to provide a stable home environment, Swanson struggled with anger and behavioral issues that seemed to escalate as he entered his teenage years. Teachers and classmates at St. Louis Park High School noticed Swanson's erratic behavior and his difficulty in forming meaningful relationships. He often displayed a lack of empathy and a disregard for authority. It was during this time that Swanson's fascination with violence and dark themes began to emerge. As Swanson entered his teenage years, his behavior became increasingly concerning. He started to isolate isolate himself from his peers and showed a growing interest in violent video games and movies. He would spend hours immersed in these virtual worlds, seemingly desensitized to the graphic content. In addition to his fascination with violence, Swanson also struggled with substance abuse. He experimented with drugs and alcohol, using them as a means to escape from his troubled reality. This dangerous combination of behavioral issues, a fascination with violence and substance abuse, would eventually lead Swanson down a dark and destructive path. In the months leading up to the fateful events that would forever change the lives of those involved, Swanson's behavior became even more erratic. He began to exhibit signs of aggression and a complete disregard for the well-being of others. Friends and acquaintances noticed a shift in his demeanor as he seemed to become more detached from reality. It was during this time that Swanson's obsession with firearms became apparent. He would spend hours researching guns online and visiting local gun stores, often expressing a desire to own a weapon. This fascination with firearms, coupled with his growing anger and lack of empathy, created a dangerous combination that would soon have devastating consequences. On the night of November 14, 2010, Swanson's troubled life took a sinister turn. Armed with a stolen handgun and wearing a ski mask to conceal his identity, he embarked on a crime spree that would forever scar the lives of those he encountered. 0 p.m. when he walked into the store, his face hidden behind the ski mask. Vicky Bowman Hall, a 47-year-old clerk, was behind the counter, unaware of the danger that lurked before her. With a chilling calmness, Swanson demanded cash and cigarettes from Bowman Hall. Despite her compliance, hoping that cooperation would spare her life, Swanson showed no mercy. In a shocking act of violence, he shot Bowman Hall, ending her life in an instant. The judge, taking into account the severity of the crimes and the lack of remorse shown by Swanson, delivered a sentence that would ensure he would never walk free again. Michael Swanson was to serve 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Nehemiah Grigo.
I am sorry for taking our parents and our sins. I wish I can take it back, but reality is that we can't.
Nehemiah Grigo was born on January 20th, 1998, in South Valley, New Mexico, to parents Greg and Sarah Griego. Growing up, Nehemiah was known to be a troubled teenager, grappling with a range of emotional and behavioral issues. The Griego family appeared to be a typical suburban family, but behind closed doors, a different reality unfolded. Nehemiah's parents, Greg and Sarah, were deeply religious individuals who raised their children in a strict and isolated environment. The family's religious beliefs were rooted in a fundamentalist Christian sect, which emphasized strict adherence to biblical teachings. Nehemiah's upbringing was marked by a combination of religious indoctrination and a lack of exposure to the outside world. The Grigo children were homeschooled, limiting their interactions with peers and the broader community. This isolation, coupled with the strict religious teachings, created a volatile environment within the Grigo household. As Nehemiah entered his teenage years, his struggles with mental health became increasingly apparent. He exhibited signs of depression, anxiety, and anger management issues. Despite these red flags, the Grigo family failed to seek professional help or intervention, relying instead on their religious beliefs to address Nehemiah's emotional turmoil. In the months leading up to the tragic events of January 19, 2013, Nehemiah's mental state deteriorated further. He began to harbor feelings of resentment and anger towards his family, particularly his parents. Grigo felt suffocated by the strict religious environment and the perceived hypocrisy of his parents' actions. It was during this time that Nehemiah's thoughts turned to violence. Grigo developed a fascination with firearms, spending hours researching and studying various types of guns. He became fixated on the idea of using a weapon to exert control and power over his own life and the lives of others. On the evening of January 19, 2013, Nehemiah Grigo's dark thoughts turned into a horrifying reality. Armed with a .22 caliber semi-automatic rifle, Grigo entered his parents' bedroom and shot his mother, Sarah Grigo, while she slept. He then proceeded to the bedrooms of his 3 younger siblings, Zephaniah, Jael, and Angelina, and callously ended their lives. The motive behind Nehemiah Grigo's actions remains a subject of speculation and debate. Some believe that Grigo's resentment towards his parents and the religious environment played a significant role in his decision to commit such a heinous act. Others argue that Grigo's mental health struggles, combined with his fascination with firearms, created a deadly combination that led to the tragic events of that fateful night. In the aftermath of the murders, Nehemiah Grigo's actions shocked the community of South Valley and sent shockwaves throughout the nation. The loss of 5 innocent lives, including the lives of 3 young children, left a lasting impact on the Grigo family, their friends, and the community at large. During the court proceedings, Nehemiah Grigo's lack of remorse and emotional detachment became evident. He showed no signs of regret or empathy for the lives he had taken. Grigo's behavior in the courtroom further deepened the pain and anguish experienced by the surviving family members as he displayed audacious behavior and a complete disregard for the gravity of his actions. Ultimately, Nehemiah Grigo was sentenced to 3 concurrent life sentences, plus an additional 7 years, for his heinous crimes. Sierra Halseth.
Welcome back to our YouTube channel. After Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Whoa! Don't put that on the camera.
It was in April of 2021 when Sierra and Aaron carried out their plan to murder Sierra's father, Daniel Heth. The details of the crime are chilling and hard to comprehend. Armed with a deadly weapon, they brutally stabbed Daniel a staggering 70 times, displaying a level of violence that is truly horrifying. But their actions didn't stop there. In an attempt to cover up their crime, Sierra and Aaron tried to dismember and burn Daniel's body. The sheer brutality and disregard for human life is shocking. It is a stark reminder of the evil that can reside within individuals. As if the murder itself wasn't enough, Sierra and Aaron also engaged in fraudulent activities. They stole Daniel's car, hoping to use it as a means to escape and evade capture. Their actions demonstrate a level of premeditation and planning that is deeply unsettling. Throughout the investigation, the evidence against Sierra and Aaron continued to mount. The authorities discovered the chilling video they recorded just 3 days after the murder. They callously discussed their actions, showcasing a complete lack of remorse or empathy. It is a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked within them. The impact of this crime on the Heth family cannot be overstated. They were left devastated by the loss of their loved one and the betrayal by Sierra, who was once a part of their family. The pain and anguish they experienced are unimaginable. Sierra and Aaron were sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 22 years served.